Think about the spark of a tiny, tiny little match. In a completely dark environment, it changes the environment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 96 of the Gordon and Charisse Show, where we're going into our second recording about gratitude because I'm so grateful. We weren't even able to cover everything in our first episode, and now we're going into this discussion more.
Well, Charisse, if we were to try to uncover every healing benefit from gratitude, we would have to flip all the rocks, literally in the Rocky Mountains, over because there are so many benefits that help our mind, help our body, helps our immune systems, helps our attitudes towards people, and really it propels us into an activation of faith because we have received something from attitude by making the choice to be grateful. Then we're able to move forward with more power, more strength, more optimism, and a clear vision about our future.
I love it because as we talked about in the previous podcast, being thankful is a feeling, but gratitude is an action.
Amen.
And so that's on psychmc.com. It was on an article about comparing the two, but I think it's so important to really understand that we're talking about living in the action, in the verb of gratitude. It's a mindset, but it's an action, and it is powerful. All the things that you just brought up, I mean, the healing benefits of gratitude, Gordon, I believe that in our hard journey with pain, that I couldn't be more grateful for gratitude. There is something powerful about gratitude that really does diffuse the sharpest objects that pain tries to leave in our relationship. That pain would try to leave inside of you if that was all that you were left with.
I totally agree. Listen, when you're in chronic pain, you have some rugged perspectives about life.
Mm-hmm. You could be a very crusty person right now, Gordon.
Absolutely. And gratitude helps to smooth out the edges. Mm-hmm. Okay? And, it's this choice. No matter how bad things are, what's your resolve in you? What's your strength and resiliency within who you are, within that soul, with how your body responds? And boy, for those people who are born again Christians, that reborn spirit that creates a new mind and a new heart, tap into that because there's real power. I know I've been able to say things are bad, but then I can turn around and still smile because they could be worse.
I feel like David demonstrated that so well in Psalms. When he would talk about his enemies surrounding him, things being torn apart from his life, his own son attacking him. But in other parts, he would write about seeing the goodness of the Lord in the land of the living. He would always come back to an attitude of gratitude, even when everything around him was falling apart, even when he was being pursued by Saul, even when he was running into the cleft of a mountain to hide. No matter what he did, he would turn back to God with an attitude of gratitude. And David is one that had God's own heart. So I believe that the truth, that the origination of gratitude comes from God himself.
Yes, it does.
And, I think one of the greatest mysteries here about gratitude, when it originates from God, is that God is grateful for you, for each listener, for each one of us, each individual person. For God so loved the world, he gave his only son, and he is grateful for you. And when we're in pain, when there's a pain thing happening, it doesn't feel like God is grateful for you. It feels like a punishment. Oftentimes.
We mentioned that in the last podcast.
That's right.
Right.
But you said it so well in the last podcast, but I want to reiterate this point because I don't think we can drive this point home enough.
Okay, sure. So if anyone's going to drive a point home, we're going to be grateful
We're going
for
home.
the hammer that's going to hit the nail.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead.
Well, just watch out. At least it's not hitting your head. You should be grateful for that. But I would say it's just that, when you realize that a lot of what you were blaming God for in your own pain story was actually the darkness that you were putting on yourself through the pain. And you broke out of that, but you stopped blaming God for every single instance of pain and all of that. And you started opening up really early there was the acute stages, yes. But even in acute stages, I think that you were able to start getting a shackle off of you by practicing gratitude and not blaming God for everything that you were going through.
And I think when you're dealing with chronic pain, we know the divorce rate is so high. It's up to 80 to 85%, whether you're a Christian or a believer or a non-Christian, non-believer, no matter what your religious beliefs are, the statistics are stratospheric. And you still have to be grateful for your spouse. And you have to be grateful for your friends and those people in church or those people in societal groups or small groups or whatever organizations you might be attached to in some way. You have to be able to, I think, gratitude by sharing that with other folks. It solidifies a real connection instead of having shackles that weigh you down and bend you under this idea of rationalism and hopelessness. So what I'd like to say for me, I know with gratitude, it's empowered me over the years to be able to still nurse like a child who might be nursing with their mother. It's allowed me to nurse the unconquerable hope during my most challenging trials. And when you start nursing that hope, then you start seeing light. And so that light can be cast into all the dark shadows of your life, and it changes your whole perspective. That's the strength of your spirit and your soul. It doesn't always have to be a fight between your spirit and your flesh.
That's right.
We can follow the spirit.
And I love that you mentioned that light. Because sometimes, Gordon, when you're in complete darkness, think about the spark of a tiny, tiny little match. As small as it is, in a completely dark environment, it changes the environment.
And you can be grateful for it.
Yes. And if you focus on that little match, and then maybe it starts a larger fire, and then maybe you finally have a bonfire when it's cold. And but it starts with a tiny little fire.
And that little flicker starts a change in perspective, but it also does this, not just how you see things, but a change in expectations. So many times when we're in chronic pain, unmet expectations lead to bitterness into the heart.
Absolutely.
So that when you have that sense of correction through gratitude, you don't have that bitterness settling in the roots of your heart.
I think what's so hard for those of us who don't live in daily chronic pain, physical pain, is that the person in chronic pain sometimes can act like, well, they don't understand me. They don't live with what I live. They don't have it so bad. And there's this, there's this shut off, like almost this superiority that happens from somebody who can be in pain over the person who isn't. And so it does change it. Gratitude changes that superiority complex, or that whatever that it may just be a protection mechanism.
It is a protection mechanism, and when our expectations aren't meant for healing, or we don't have enough pain reduction, or we're slipping in our daily activities of living skills. We can't even hardly get out of bed or vacuum or do anything. Okay, we can't help. And then our spouse, we're not understanding where our spouse is coming from or our partner. it's easy to move into a non-gratitude mode to say, well, if you just had my pain, then you would understand me.
Well, that's going to drive every person away from you.
Absolutely. And that's not correct thinking. That's not righteous thinking. That's not love. But sometimes it's understandable when people lash out. I mean, I've had fleeting thoughts like that, but immediately I know that that's poison to a relationship.
And let's get real, Gordon. Sometimes those lash outs happen a few times a day, even now.
Right now?
Well, not today. You got me coffee, so I will always be grateful for that. But, you know, you can have that lash out, but you will catch yourself in when that happens.
I will quickly apologize.
You do. And you go back to that place of gratitude.
Yes, I do.
You do.
Because I want my faith to be ignited into action. I don't want to step into disbelief.
Correct.
Gratitude opens up a wider vision of God's transcendent thinking and eternal living, where you see that you belong to the environment. That's what gratitude does.
You're connected to it.
You're connected to it.
Yeah.
And what it does is it allows you to take one step forward away from the pain, even though the pain is still there. The shackle is not as tight around your ankle or your wrist to hold you down. There's a little loosening. So when you stay one step ahead of the pain in your life, you keep saying you have gratefulness for this, that, and the other, and you move forward and your faith is activated even more so. The shackles become less and less and less tight around who you are, around your soul, around your mind.
Yes.
Okay, and the bitterness doesn't grow in your heart like it normally did before. I would go to this point and say this. For me, that gratitude has been more powerful than looking for times of motivation. I know that I've tried to motivate myself at times to pull up your bootstraps.
Just snap out of it.
Stick with the discipline.
Yeah.
It's the gratitude that's allowed me to be more disciplined. It's the gratitude that's brought me in a sense of prayer. It's the gratitude, the changing of my mind, the chemicals that are changing, which we're going to cover a little later in this podcast. That gratitude is powerful. Just powerful.
Can I share a little bit on this side of it? What
Absolutely.
gratitude means to me?
Absolutely.
I've shared a few in the last podcast, but I want to share some more that I had written down. And I think for those who are watching somebody suffer, that you may not feel the physical pain, but it's easy to enter into your own depressive spiral.
Yes.
And depression is real, and it can really affect people. But I would say this, that gratitude loosens the spiral of depressive thoughts. Because for me, I cannot be in a space of depression and gratitude. And the same, like one of those has to decide, I have to decide which space am I going to be in? Am I going to be in that place of depression? And sometimes I get really depressed. I do. But if I'm going to live in that space, or am I going to allow gratitude to be my friend, to come beside me and to remind me of the goodness?
Yes.
And it gives space to think about the difficulties of watching somebody suffer in a different way. For instance, like if I had not been grateful for pain not only being your teacher, but pain it's also been my teacher.
Yes, it has.
I wouldn't have grown. I would have stayed stifled. You might have been the only one that would have grown through this process if I just allowed the dark, depressive thoughts to take over on my side. And I battle with it. There are days where it's hard. But, you know, I'm able, instead of, as you said, for me too, I can't just always pull myself up by the bootstraps. I can't just slap myself silly and pretend like I don't feel a sadness on things that are lost because of pain. But when I feel lost, that's when I know God has already found me.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And I get into a state of gratitude again and again. And I pull myself out of that depressive state through practicing gratitude.
Well, Shreesh, you're moving us into the next subject matter is this. And this is powerful for me. Mm-hmm. Gratitude is a form of praise or worship.
Yes.
So when we're worshiping God daily and we're acknowledging Him in the way we think, in the way we behave, in the way we act, okay, we develop a brand new emotional response to everything in our life. Mm-hmm. And so when we're worshiping God, okay, and we're praising Him through a spirit of gratitude with our faith, powerful.
It is powerful.
I mean, it's so powerful that it creates an environment of essentially ushering praise right into the doorways of heaven.
And there is something very amazing that happens in that space.
It's my personal time of praise with God has been powerful.
Well, God indwells in the presence, in the praise.
Yes, He does.
He dwells in that place of praise and worship with His people.
Right. And in a sense, when you have the spirit of gratitude in your praise, mm-hmm. you're walking in and you're almost practicing God's presence within you.
Well, you are.
You are.
You are. You're opening, you mentioned in the last podcast, you're opening windows and doors inside of you. That fresh air is coming in to release something sweet to a contaminated body.
Right. And that when that air comes in, it's almost like vagal breathing. The air comes in to say, hey, okay, pain, we see you. We know there's an alarm system. We know there's chronic inflammation in the body. We know a lot of things that have happened. We know that you've got emotional triggers to all these traumas you've had in your past mm-hmm. and everything that you're dealing with brokenness. But we're going to let the fresh air in mm-hmm. and still clean out the room of that space within your soul.
That's right.
Okay, and then let's take it out so that we can still praise what's outside of us.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
And so then it becomes this wash, rinse, and repeat cycle in our lives with the spirit of gratitude. And it breaks down all of the walls of opposition that we have in our life.
Yes.
All of the limitations that we think we have with chronic pain. And it frees the spouse.
It does. I am a living, breathing testimony of that.
Okay. I'd like to share something very personal.
Oh, this is not scripted.
This is not scripted.
Uh-oh.
But I want to say this, that with gratitude and you're walking into that praise and prayer session with God, which is very private, I don't want people to get discouraged because they cannot maintain pure thoughts about God or that sacred space that they're entering. In other words, a lot of times we'll go into prayer, we'll be in praise with God, and we cannot even keep a pure thought for 1 minute. Mm-hmm. Or if we're praising God for 1 minute, all of a sudden something else pops through our mind, like I've got to take care of this administrative thing, or this person needs this, or did I pay this bill, or oh, this happened in my past, or am I a lustful individual because I want money and a better spouse and a better life, and look what happened to me in pain?
Did you just say a better spouse?
I'm just using this as an example,
okay,
of what can go or flood someone's mind, okay? A lot of times what's happening is because you're honest and vulnerable, all those impurities almost have to come out with God. Mm-hmm. Okay, so they come out. It's almost like they're in this refiner's pot. They're boiling right now. And then the more you're practicing His presence, the more pure your thoughts get. And the more you want to incorporate new habits.
So you're saying give yourself permission.
Yes.
For that layer of gunk.
Right.
If it comes up.
Right.
Don't beat yourself up and don't go back to the shackles.
Right.
of an ungrateful heart.
And don't walk into disbelief and say, okay, God, you must not be effective in my life.
Right.
I'm going to have to go to something else, and maybe I'll have to find a new religious view, or maybe I'm going to try a new thought process, or I'm going to try this new methodology on how to cope with certain things.
Or just a new drug, or
Right.
a new this, and we can go through so many news. Let's try this, let's try that. It gets so confusing and it gets overwhelming. And sometimes the best way to experience new is to stop in your tracks and to look right around in the most simple way of what's right around you.
Mm-hmm.
And be in the present with what's around you and be grateful for it.
Right. And that process that we're in with God as we're praising him
Mm-hmm.
is that we're still being emptied. And when we're emptied and we feel useless, okay, in our deepest points of prayer, I want you to think of this. God is still calling us to a new life.
Mm-hmm.
And he's calling us to something beyond what we think is useful.
Absolutely.
So he's got another useful for us. And if you want to go there with your faith, incorporate a spirit of gratitude in your praise. Mm-hmm. And then you can move beyond what you think you can only do into something you never even imagined that God has planned for you. This is part of the becoming stage of transformation.
Yes, it is.
And gratitude is an excellent form of praise to move us in that direction.
It is an action. It is a verb.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I wrote something down. Gratitude will help remove the debris of self-importance from some of our delusional thoughts. We start developing almost fantasy type thoughts of maybe I can do this and maybe I can do that. And we haven't even looked at the small parts that might be impediments, that we need that gratitude, that spirit of gratitude to help break the shackles off those first. Mm-hmm. We can't jump to an alternative reality.
It helps you not be in a place of escapism.
Right. And that gratitude helps us with our identity and purpose.
Right.
And we're not just rebirthed. But the gratitude is the nurturing process. Mm-hmm. We get nurtured and we grow in our spiritual being. Mm-hmm. We grow in our love towards others.
Totally.
That's what gratitude helps us do. And we know this, Sharice, the more we practice his presence, the more our minds are made new.
Yes.
Okay? So let's go through a few things. Okay? A few brain science benefits of gratitude.
More benefits, Gordon.
Oh, they go on infinitely.
They do.
Okay. Number one, I want people to think of this. We tend to only accept, believe, and surrender to thoughts that are equal to our emotional state. So the key is, we have to surrender to an emotional state of gratitude. Then we'll be able to receive the changes much easier, rather than trying to muscle through the process of trying to attain affirmation.
And again, it's more than just the emotional state of gratitude. It's the action of gratitude, surrendering and demonstrating the action of gratitude.
Yes. It's a healing waters. Gratitude is basically diving into the healing waters.
Yes, I love that.
Number two, I want you to think of this. The biology of gratitude has a direct effect on immune regulation. It's the ultimate state of receiving something, or to be placed beyond our sense of survival, so that we can freely create without this spirit of self-condemnation.
I dare say, and I'm not a scientist, but I'm thinking about this as you were saying it. I wonder if gratitude will take you out of a fight or flight mode, out of that part of the brain that is just in, it's so primal. it's just trying to survive. It takes you beyond that.
It will help deregulate stressful activators. It will help calm down those hormones.
Yes.
Absolutely it will.
Yeah.
You're going to have less of a compromised immune system. Listen, we don't want an immune system that's completely compromised. And then we have brain hormones, gut hormones that are completely suppressed. We're going to be open up for more pain,
right?
More emotional trauma, and the body responds accordingly. So if we want that body to develop this new subconscious mind that carries everything emotionally, gratitude is a way to help strengthen the inner core of our immune system.
Very well said, Gordon.
Okay. Point number 3, get to the place of gratitude to reprogram your thoughts. Reprogram your thinking about something, how you view things from the outside, and then how they're interpreted on the inner being. Go ahead and do that. Then you're going to also see a change in your autonomic nervous system, as you were talking about with fight or flight, that will basically change our body's response.
So if it's out of that like sympathetic nervous system response where it's just on, it's just so hyper
and on overload.
And if gratitude calms that down, imagine that you're creating a new space inside of yourself for another measure of healing.
Yes. It's powerful.
It is.
Just now listen, if we have the ability, Charisse, to make ourselves sick by overstress, and I would go this far, stress kills us. Stress eventually kills our bodies. Our bodies are not meant to live forever. We're going to be given a new body someday.
Right.
Okay, we know that with the future.
That's right.
Stress does that to us.
Stress doesn't give us the new body.
Right. So if we have the power to kill our bodies, do we have the power through gratitude to increase that immune system, as we just mentioned, as one of the benefits? The answer is yes.
I believe it opens that space for God to move powerfully inside of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because the healing capacity is already in us. People will say, well, I want to be healed. You've already got a healing capacity in this wondrous body. So we're going to optimize it and improve it.
And activate it.
Activate it.
Activate it through gratitude.
That's where you transmute from sickness into transformation.
That's right.
Even though you still might carry a thorn in the flesh. Okay? So I would like to say this. If you can believe in your future, the promises that God has for you, and you have that spirit of gratitude with your faith, okay, then your body will respond to those changes. Your body starts to change. Now, let's take a simple example. Let's take a tree. Okay, and I did this in my postgraduate class. I don't even want to mention to the audience how many years ago this was, okay?
Was I born yet?
But we've heard of the experiment. Sure, stop. We've heard of the experiment of 2 trees.
Yes.
Where if you take a tree for 30 days and yell at it and curse at it and not have any spirit of gratitude, not say anything optimistic nor say anything positive, if you do that for 30 days, will that have a different effect on that particular little tree or plant versus another one that you nurture every day with positive words of affirmation, a spirit of gratitude? And the findings have shown that plant or tree, and giving the same doses of water per day, okay, that tree that you speak life into will live. The tree that you speak death into will die.
Well, words have the power of life and death. Proverbs talks about that.
And words flow from your spirit.
Yes.
And that spirit of gratitude can be extremely powerful. Let's conclude this session.
Wow.
Your thought for the day.
Well, big summary here. I believe whether you're in pain or you're the one that is enduring somebody going through pain, that gratitude can change your entire purpose for living.
Yes.
Entire purpose. Your entire purpose can shift and you can find meaning in the smallest of things. It's going to unlock your deepest potential of having healing happen for you.
Yes. I would like to say this. The spirit of gratitude does not rid your life of trials. I want you to think of this. When we're living in our past and we have all these old problems that keep popping up in a loop, and we have the same responses mentally, emotionally, physically, over and over and over, you can have a spirit of gratitude, but it will help you move into the future.
Yes.
But you'll still have new problems. And you'll still have to incorporate gratitude in order to have growth. So I want to say this. Gratitude is a super way to change your emotional state in response to your thoughts and in relation to your outlook about your future.
I love it, Gordon.
So that concludes part 2.
Wow.
I love it. I tell you what, we could have several different parts to the spirit of gratitude.
Yes.
Okay. How do you get a hold of us, Charisse?
GordonandCharisse.com. Go to our website, because from that website, there are many places for you to get connected. From our Facebook page, the Better Living Community, which is our private Facebook group, to YouTube. We really, really encourage you on these podcasts, subscribe to YouTube. We would like to get an increase of followers on our YouTube channel. You can find it on our website, but the Gordon and Charisse Show is on YouTube. It's on Apple. It's on Spotify. But for sure, we would love to have an increase of our YouTube subscribers. That's how you can express your gratitude back towards us, is by being connected, subscribing.
Active. Yes.
And we want to hear your voices.
Yes.
We're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this for you because we love you, and we know that you don't have to walk through all of this alone, that we're a community. And we want your voice to matter.
Well said, Charisse. I'll ponder on these thoughts this next week for the next podcast show. So we'll see you next week.
We'll see you next time. Thank you so much.